now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Hi, my friends. Well, I got good news for you and I got bad news for you. You want to hear the good news first? The good news is we're all living longer. The bad news is sometimes when we get older, things happen in our lives that we need help with. Today, folks, we're going to talk about getting older and how we can improve our quality of life. And who better to come on the show to talk about that is Paula Hahn. She's the executive director of the Fritzingertown Senior Living Community, and comes with a lot of interesting information about as we get older what we should look for. Nothing to panic about, but the more we're educated on what's going on as we're getting older. I know I'm not getting older. Paula's getting older, but I'm not getting older, right, Paula? You're older than me now, right? Aren't you? You passed me up somewhere.
You're always right, Sam.
Paula, thanks for coming on the show.
Okay.
You know, I had three doctors on the show. I had Dr. Bafil, Dr. Kislin, and Dr. Benyo. And basically, we talked about different things with people who are over 60 years old, what they should be looking for, and to help people with their quality of life. And you're doing that all the time, even with Elder Wish. So, as we get older, things happen in our lives. Okay. So, what should we in good health, around maybe early 60s, maybe mid 50s or whatever, what should we be looking for to prepare for our later years?
Well, you bring up a very good point in that we are living longer, and I don't know that generations past really prepared for this time of their lives. So now that we have the opportunity to be able to do that, we should be. For those of us who are capable, and we're not all capable, but for those of us who are capable, we should be looking into long-term care insurance. The younger we start, the less expensive it is, but it will pay off for you in the future. The other thing, even financially, if you're not able to do long-term care insurance, we all should be at least initiating some kind of conversation with an elder attorney, maybe to start estate planning, so those monies, so that everything that we've worked for, does not go to paying for care later. And that we can have some for our families, that we can hold on to some of the things that we've worked for as well. An elder attorney can help to do that, to estate plan, and make sure some of those monies are set aside for our care, but yet we have some control over that now.
You bring up some interesting points. I know that I bought long-term insurance back 2-3 years ago, and it was X amount of dollars per month. I figured, well, it wasn't real high, it wasn't real low, but it was something that you should have, and I hope I can never use it, but you never know, okay? And why is that so important to look into long-term health insurance?
More or less, though, that we have some control. I mean, if we have no assets, we're usually talking about medical assistance, Medicare paying for our stay, but it limits us as to what we can have. You're not talking about a private room. You may not be talking about the nicest facility. It's just so you have some control over your future and help your children make some of those decisions without putting a huge financial burden on them as well.
And as far as an elder law lawyer, I think that's extremely important. For those folks, if you want to know, Gillespie, Miscavige, Ferdinand, and Barranco, their law firm has an elder attorney there, so you could certainly give them a call and find out, just get information. I try to get the show as informative, and sometimes people think they're in good health now, they're maybe they're doing okay, they're in their facility, then something may happen, God forbid a heart attack or a slight stroke or something. Then that's when the family begins to wonder what's going on. Sometimes it's like, not that it's too late, but you should be doing these preparing things a lot better in the for the future.
Absolutely. And I run into families all the time where the parents know exactly what they want as far as heroic measures, and they want to be able to have some control over their destiny. When certain things happen to them, they know exactly, in most cases, they know exactly what they want done and what they don't want done. If they don't put that into writing or make it known to their family members, especially when something sudden happens, the families are wondering, what would I want? What would he want? And it really should be what the person wants for themselves.
Okay, now the other question is this, okay, and we had this discussion many times. When I see seniors who are either living by themselves, If they're happy and they have family members or friends coming over and there's activities going on, that's great because they're busy. But what saddens me is when I see I see sometimes elderly people who are just sitting on the porch, at home, nothing to do, you know, and their quality of life is just going right down the tubes, okay? And those are the things that I think sadden me. So, but then some people are always nervous, Paula, when you're moving out of your homestead, you know, and you're moving into a facility like, you know, Fritzingertown Senior Living Community, which is a fabulous place, okay? How do you walk through that? When do you know you should be talking to mom or dad or your uncle or your aunt or whatever to move into a facility like that?
I think the two main things would be socialization and safety. I mean, obviously, if their safety is an issue, then it really pushes it to the forefront that, on the concerns that you have as far as placement, whether it's going to be somebody coming into the home to help, but safety is key. I mean, especially with somebody with dementia or somebody whose mobility has come to the point where it's really not safe for them to get up without falling, and you know, if they fall, somebody may not get to them for 2, 3, 4 days. I mean, it does happen. And as far as dementia is concerned, you know, around the stove, taking their medications, wandering from the home. So safety and socialization are important.
So what would be the number one telltale sign that I should start looking to talk to my parents or my relatives or whatever to start considering, and then have a visit with you, and you could show them the facility, and assisted living today is fabulous.
Well, if you're asking yourself, is it time, then it's probably time.
Okay, yeah.
If you're asking yourself that, you've probably had some red flags or some concerns.
And he didn't take his pills. He forgot to take his pills.
Right.
He's getting a. So, if those are some signs, then I think you should be concerned about them. And it's, you know, it's a difficult situation. You know, we all have them in our families. You know, we all have them where you have to make a decision, and hopefully the person who's going to go to that facility would look at it through open arms. So, what would be the process then for me if I decided that, you know, my loved one or my relative should consider going to assisted living?
Well, one of the first things you need to do is to consider yourself not doing it to them, but doing it for them. If there's anything I can get across to people, you're not doing something to them. Hopefully you're doing it for them. If you go into it with that attitude, and you have to identify, you have to put yourself in their shoes and realize what resistance they're going to have, what questions they're going to have, what concerns they may have all your answers ready so that, I mean, if they don't have an answer to their question, it's going to be an out for them. And if it baffles you, then it's going to come away with a negative experience as opposed to a positive.
Now you start, as you begin to see that there's things that are happening, okay, that dad or mom or uncle or aunt was not taking their medicines, forgetting things, etc. Now here's where the challenge, okay. How do I begin to approach that? Folks, I'm talking to Paula Hahn, who is the Executive Director of Fritzingertown Senior Living Community. A little later in the show, we're going to be talking to Paula Hahn Medora. Her uncle's at Willows, and that's another whole area that we're going to talk about as we get older. Some things we should be concerned about. Sometimes we don't like to face these things, but they're there, and it's best to start planning now than wait till it's too late. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Once again, 24/7, and all of our shows, ssptv.com. Watch all of our shows there. The girls are doing fabulous. The numbers are up over 120,000 people watching the girls every week. Thank you so much for making us the #1 talk show at 135,000 people per week watching the Sam Lesante Show, covering all the areas now from my Pine Grove up to Kingston. And don't forget, folks, GreatSpringWater.com. GreatSpringWater.com. This is the official water of Samson Productions and SSP TV. You can get the water. Niagara is one of the waters, and they also provide water for Starbucks. You can buy their 4-gallon water at Walmart, and as well as the 5-gallon drums. Just give them a call, GreatSpringWater.com. My guest today, Paula Hahn, who is the Executive Director of Fritzingertown Senior Living Community, and a little later on we'll talk to Paula Hahn Medora, who has an uncle at one of the a part of the facility there, the Willows. Okay, how do you make the approach now? Okay, we know things are not going well with mom, dad, or whatever, And how do we make this approach?
Well, first of all, your concern when you go into it, I mean, everybody is an individual. So, I mean, there's no specific way that works for everybody. When you do go into it, it needs to be not about you, not about this will make my life easier, this will take my worry away, this is, this is for me. You need to say how the person can benefit from it. You can start out by saying, I have some concerns, I've noticed this, and this is what I think, I'm hoping together we can come to a solution, because it would be best for you if you gave thought to this. Include them in tours of the facility, give them as much control and say over what they say, even the littlest things as far as when would you like to go to see it. The more control that they have, the better the adjustment they make. It can't be about the children, because that's, to them, is going to be a little selfish. It's got to be about how the resident or how the prospective resident would benefit.
Okay, now, with that being said, is it best that, when you have that initial conversation with your loved one, that when they call you, Paula, at Fritzingertown, is it best for you to come up to the home to meet with them in their home and talk about different things, or is it best, sometimes when you bring someone down, they get a little nervous, but what do you found, what have you found the best transition, at least of getting them looking at your facility?
If they're resistant, I mean, there's many times that they will say, I am not going anywhere, I am not, doing anything. Then more often than not, I will go, I will talk to them, break the ice a little bit, see what questions and concerns that they have, and then invite them to come down and look around the facility. It's got to be, the ball's in their court. They have to be in control.
Speaking of facility, when we're looking at assisted living today, I've said this many times, there's no reason for anyone today to be in a home by themselves, not protected, not getting the proper, when you have the facilities that we have in this country. At your place, Fritzingertown Senior Living Community, there are great opportunities. If in a thumb, give me a synopsis of what your place is all about, Fritzingertown.
We're there to provide whatever the person needs. Socialization, obviously, safety, to make it that they're not around stoves, that somebody's monitoring their medication. Our job certainly is not to make them an invalid. So what help they do need, if it's as far as bathing, dressing, activities of daily living, we will help them with it, supervise them with it. If they're capable of doing it themselves, they may need just cueing. I mean, we certainly want them to be as independent as they can, as long as they can be. But what help they need, we will provide it.
Now, do you have testing for dementia and Alzheimer's?
We do not do the testing. The doctors actually do the testing, and that's usually done prior to coming to us. There's so many different causes of dementia that it's usually something else that forces them to be hospitalized or go to the doctor, and it's the doctor that usually says it's dementia.
In your Alzheimer dementia unit, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, regardless of whether it's Alzheimer's or it's dementia, it's a memory impairment. So it is a unit that is basically secured so that if people do have a tendency to wander, they can't wander unobserved. And all the activities are geared to being cared for people with memory impairment. The activities are not the same activities as you would have with somebody whose memory is not impaired. Activities usually include as far as caring for themselves, going for meals, helping them to feed themselves, religious activities, which are extremely important to people with dementia, and just helping them to get through the day as best as they can without feeling stressed by their own memory impairment, because they do know it's there.
The interesting thing is, I was in your facility, I would say maybe about, how long do you have the dementia unit facility?
The dementia unit's about 12 years.
Well, probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I remember we were doing something there, and I went, you took me into the unit. I mean, it's like a regular, it's not like you're going into a cell or something like that. You would never even think it. No. I mean, the people are doing activities, it's like there's nothing, so I don't want people thinking, oh, it's a special unit, but it's just like, it's a normal, homey, yeah. Now, speaking of units, coming up and then after the break, we have Paula Hahn Madura, who decided to who decided to make a move and raise the level of quality of life for her uncle. And one of the areas is the Willows part, and that's another part of assisted living, folks, that we'll talk about after a break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Remember, we're all getting older, and we should prepare for what's happening later on in our life, so we have a good quality of life. And my guest today is Paula Hahn, who is the Executive Director of Fritzingertown Senior Living Community. And now I'm joined by Paula Hahn Madura, whose uncle is at the Willows. But before I get to them, to give you an example, we're talking about quality of life, folks, you know, and at Fritzingertown, you know, you get personal care, you have a secure memory care unit, you have 24-hour care staff, you have licensed LPNs, RNs on staff. Each level has its own dining room, a system with activities of daily living, medication and diabetic monitoring, housekeeping and laundry services, transportation to doctor appointments, cable television, very important, daily activities, courtyard and veranda areas, veteran program for the vets. There's another interesting thing, folks. If you're a veteran or you should definitely talk to Paula about that. Now, before I talk to Paula, there are different cares, personal care at Fritzingertown, okay? Discuss the three cares that you have.
Well, we have our secure dementia that we talked about. We have personal care, which is basically just assistance with bathing, dressing, and the activities of daily living. Or people may not need any care at all and just are there for the socialization, medication monitoring, activities, things like that. We also have independent living apartments where more often than not, it's for people who have come there who may have lost a spouse. Who are still fairly independent. They can have full kitchens, full bath, living room, bedroom, just like a regular little apartment, but yet they have the supervision of somebody being there all the time.
Hence, Paula Hahn, first of all, thanks for coming on the show. I know she called you yesterday, and I really appreciate you coming. It's always good to hear for testimonial. Your uncle is at the Willows, okay? Let's go back as to just why, you know, did you decide that your uncle needed whatever. Now, this is a little bit different. This is like an independent apartment, etc. So what were some of the areas?
Well, about 3 years ago, my uncle was taking care of my aunt who is now deceased. She had had a stroke a number of years prior to that, and he was taking care of her. They had some help coming into the house, and one night I got a call, frantic, from my aunt that there was something wrong with my uncle, and here he actually had a mini stroke. And he was hospitalized, and at that time I realized, wow, he's taking care of someone who could take care of him, you know, if something should happen to him. And prior to that, we had looked at Fritzingertown, we looked at other personal care facilities too. So we were familiar with the personal care homes. And after he had that mini stroke, we decided that it's probably best that he's not living independently with my aunt at the time.
So where is he at? What unit is he in now? And how did, you know, give me the transition of what happened when he went down there. You know, was it strange for him? Did he fit in? I mean, you know, what happens?
Well, he's in the Willows, which is one of the like apartment-like settings like Paula just spoke of.
I've seen them, and they're beautiful.
They're very nice. Yeah. And when they moved down there, they seemed to fit in like right away. They're very social. Well, my aunt at the time did have a stroke, so she had problems with her speech, so she really didn't as much speak to other people. But my uncle, he is very friendly and you know, made friends down there. And really, when he went down there, it was good. He's safe, secure, and that's really what I was going for.
What does he do throughout the day? I mean, is it like he has his independence, right, his privacy, and then if he wants to socialize, I know they like to socialize a lot.
Well, of course, meal times are a big time for him.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm sure for all of the residents. Yeah. He goes out for meals. He watches TV, which is what he did at home too.
You're going to be watching the Sam Lesante show.
Yeah,
that's okay. Did you put that as a
requirement?
A requirement, okay.
It's a requirement.
Watches TV, comes out for any of the activities that they have out in. He lives down in the Willows, which is kind of two hallways of apartments. So he'll come out of the apartments, go talk to people who happen to be sitting out in the living area or in the community area. If there's any kind of entertainment going on, he goes out for that. Sometimes he'll come out and there'll be bingo or something for that, or tea or something for the women. If I come down there at that time, I'll say, no, that's something for the women that's going on out there. I'm like, well, how did you know that? You must have went out there to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So
Is he happy, Paula?
every time I see him, he's a joy. He's pleasant. So if he's a joy and is friendly and he appears to be very happy to me.
So okay, so he had a mild mini stroke,
Yeah.
and at that time, when you approached him about making a transition, how did he react to that?
Well, along the way he had been saying, and it was kind of like what Paula said. You know, if you're questioning it, it might be about time. And he was sort of doing that with me for a number of years here and there. Well, maybe we should be looking into something, you know, for the future. Maybe we should be looking into living somewhere else.
So he was sort of like preparing himself.
I think so.
That's great.
And then at the time when it really came about, he said, with driving, he's like, I don't know if I could drive anymore. I'd ask him, did you eat lunch today? He'd say, I can't really remember. I said, oh, you can't remember if you ate lunch today, Uncle Bern? And he'd say, no. So he'd be like, you know, he'd give me a look that said, I know there's something not right. You know,
So now he's in a place where he's comfortable and he's enjoying a quality of life.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So going back to what we talked about, Paula, when we all have to accept what we are. Okay. Certainly people don't want to get old or sick or sick or whatever. But if we begin to put our mindset as to where we are and accept that and then move from that point, it makes it better for everybody, particularly for the person, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. In her uncle's case, they were already at Fritzingertown when she passed.
Yes.
And I think it was a huge bonus for him in that he had people around him at the time when it was a huge loss for him. So we never really gave him an opportunity to get depressed or to sit in his apartment and grieve. I mean, he did grieve, but not to the point where people, you know, when they lose a spouse and they're at home alone, that depression can set in, and sometimes it's an awful thing. He luckily didn't have to do that.
I have to ask you a question. I know Paul is sitting here, and you be honest with me. Okay, what about the quality of care at Fritzinger Senior Community Senior Living Community? What about the quality of care? I mean, all the total picture here.
The total picture is that when I go down there, I can sense from all of the staff there that they really care. Mm-hmm. You know, I go down, I say, how's my uncle doing? They have a story about my uncle. They have things to say about him, things that I know that if they just walked in his room, did what they had to do and walked out, they wouldn't know about him. They know all about him. I could tell that they really care, that it's a very caring environment.
And don't you think that's critical, Paula?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But starting from you, you know, you've always been a caregiver. You know, your heart is bigger than that entire building, even with Elder Wish, you know. But you could see the warmth and the caring, and that's the most important thing. You know, sometimes when you go there, you get frustrated, and you're only there maybe visiting for a half an hour, and you're frustrated. But these people are working there 8 hours, and yet they're you know, sure you get some frustrations, but it's good. In closing, what advice would you have for people who are seniors right now, maybe thinking of doing something, making a move in their life?
Well, again, if they're questioning their own safety and their own happiness, then it's certainly time to start looking. If you're not ready right now, it still is a very good time to go and tour facilities, to look and see which one would be best suited for you, so that in the event that something did happen, you're in control, you're making the decision. I've looked into it, and this is the facility I'd like to go to if I have to.
And folks, there's a lot of great facilities around the country. You know, 788-4178, 788-4178 is Paula's number. You could certainly give her a call, or for that matter, start looking into it now. Long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance is very important, and you can call the all offices, Gillespie and Miscavige, Ferdinand and Barranco. They have an elder lawyer there who can help you out, just give you some advice. These are things you'll be looking at right now. I want to thank you for the great response we had with all the doctors on. I'm hoping you learned something today. Thank you, Paula.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paula Hahn.
You're welcome.
Don't forget, 24/7 ssptv.com. My email, sam@ssptv.com. We'll see you next time.